Hey, what's up? I'm Seth Warburton, and this is What Movies Teach, the channel where I analyze the direct and indirect lessons and messages in movies to decide if it's a movie I'm happy watching and if it's one that I'd like to share with my kids. Okay, I'm still analyzing Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They had phases with all of this, and I'm to the movie Thor. But I gotta be honest, when I heard they were coming out with a movie about Thor, I was not very excited. I didn't know much about him. I knew he was an ancient Norse legend, and that's it. I really didn't know why he was also a Marvel superhero. In fact, I kind of thought that was cheating. It's like, get your own superhero. Come up with a new idea. I mean, come on. Since then, though, with all the Thor movies, especially the most recent one, Thor Ragnarok, Thor is now one of my favorite characters, and he's really cool. I watched it again last night. I tried to analyze those lessons, and here's what I found. So the movie starts out with Thor being coronated king of Asgard. And Asgard is this planet out in space that's really advanced. Everything's gold, it's beautiful. It's got like some amazing technology, but they also ride horses. It's this really like mythical place that they do a good job making it feel, somewhat real, like it could be out in space somewhere. Thor's coronation gets interrupted by an attack from their enemies, the Frost Giants. And they stop the Frost Giants, but they also stop the coronation. I don't really understand why. If a wedding is interrupted, do you just not get married? Is that the determining factor? Oh, we got interrupted. Sorry, we're not getting married. Oh well. Either way, Thor's ticked that they got attacked, and so he convinces his friends and his brother Loki to come with him to go attack the Frost Giants back. And Loki is his brother, but you understand that Loki is kind of the one in the wings manipulating everything, and he does a great job. While he's convincing Thor not to attack the Frost Giants, he's using these words that make Thor upset, and he does attack the Frost Giants, and he's doing it on purpose. He knows exactly what he's doing. By the way, Tom Hiddleston was the perfect person to cast as Loki. So there's this big fight with the Frost Giants. Thor is one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so you're actually not too worried about him, but his friends are getting overwhelmed. One of them gets hurt pretty badly, and then they all get surrounded, and you know that Thor can't save them all. He could probably save himself, but some of these people are going to die, and it's his fault. And it might even trigger a huge war that they've been trying to avoid for, hundreds of years. Luckily, his dad, Odin, the god of Asgard and just a super powerful being as well, comes and saves them. But he is ticked. The rash actions of Thor have put a lot of people in danger. And that's the first lesson I get out of this movie, is that even if you're a super powerful god, rash actions can put a lot of people in danger. And it did. I mean, his friends got hurt. The people of Asgard are threatened by war now. And so his dad is really upset. Another thing I learned is don't get Odin upset. I mean, that guy'd be scary.
Father.
It's funny because Odin talks about not doing rash things, and then he just suddenly decides to take Thor's hammer away, which is a source of his power, and his strength, and his godliness, like everything. He just takes it away all that at that point after, the war is now threatened against Asgard. And so Odin takes his hammer, and he casts him out. He throws him to earth, and he says something to the hammer. He says, "He who be worthy can lift up this hammer." He says it a lot better than I do, but he says something like this. "He who be worthy can have this hammer," and he throws the hammer to earth. And then you see Loki in the background being like, this is exactly what I wanted. But it begs the question then. So he says, "He who be worthy can lift this hammer." What is worthy? I mean, what's the definition of that? And that's kind of what the rest of the movie determines. And it's kind of an interesting journey. Thor arrives on Earth. He's found by this lady named Jane and her friend Eric and her other friend Darcy. They help him in his journey. But this whole time, he's trying to have his one goal, which was to be king of Asgard and to get his hammer back. But you see, again, during this journey, other people trying to lift the hammer. And you figure out what worthy isn't. Worthy isn't being somebody who's just trying to have fun. Worthy isn't curiosity. a bunch of agents from this organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. come, and they try to get the hammer, and they can't lift it either. So you find out that worthy isn't those things. And I think that's the next lesson is we're learning what worthy isn't. So Thor has a fun journey with Jane and her friends, just getting into being a human, right? He doesn't know how to get around Earth, and they kind of help him with that. And that's kind of all happening in the background. But he's really just trying to get to his hammer. He finally does get to his hammer. He has a good fight with all the agents. He defeats him, but he goes to the hammer and he tries to pick it up, and we get our next lesson in this movie is that worthiness is not entitlement, and it's not just raw strength. You can't, even if you're the strongest guy around, that doesn't mean you're worthy to lift this hammer and you're worthy to have this power. I mean, that's what they're trying to say here. Being Thor is being very powerful. Being granted that power comes with certain responsibilities, and entitlement is not what gives you those responsibilities. Neither does just raw strength. And he goes down and he tries to lift it with all his might. At this point, I learned something else in the movie too. I mean, dang, I need to work on my arms. So to me, this is one of the best points in the movie where you see Thor, he is just broken. He was not able to lift the hammer that he was fully expecting to lift. I mean, he had this expectation. I think we kind of knew as the audience that he was not in the place he was supposed to be, but he had no idea. And you see him just broken. And that's a big turning point in the movie for this guy. So Thor's really sad at this point. He's been captured by the agents that were watching the hammer. Loki comes to visit him, and Loki's really cool. He has this magic where he can be invisible to other people, but not to Thor. And so he's there. He talks to Thor. He lies to Thor. He says, you know what? Dad is dead. Mom is upset. Don't ever come back to Asgard. You're just ruining everything. And Thor's already just broken that he can't lift this hammer, and he's just like, oh man, I did ruin everything. You're right. I'm sad. And you see his character start to turn around at this point. You also have another quick glimpse of Loki trying to lift the hammer, which is pretty cool. It's kind of another lesson is worthiness is not trickery, and it's also not title. So at this point, Loki is actually king of Asgard. Odin didn't die. He's just, he's gotten really exhausted. I guess apparently he has to like renew his strength every 100 years or so. And so he's doing that. He's like off in a bed and his strength's coming back, but he's completely out of the picture. And Loki's been made king. And just having the title of king, again, is not worthiness. Title's not worthiness. Trickery's not worthiness. So we learn some more things here. So finally in the movie, Thor's really sad. He kind of accepts his fate. He just goes back with Jane, and he's just like, well, I'm just going to live on Earth now, be a regular guy with really big arms, jeez, and just hang out. But his friends aren't happy with this from Asgard, so they come from Asgard. They let him know that Loki lied. Loki sends actually this big robot that it's called the Destroyer. It's almost unstoppable. He sends it to Earth after Thor's friends because they've committed treason. And they say, hey, you need to help us stop this robot and stop Loki. And Thor's just like, I can't. You know, I thought I had the strength. I thought I had the entitlement. I don't anymore. But instead, we need to help some people here on Earth. So they decide to help the people in the town because they know the Destroyer is going to come after them, and a lot of people will get hurt. So they help evacuate the town, and he's like, guys, I can't help you. You guys attack the Destroyer. I'll help get people out. They do attack the Destroyer, and they get not destroyed, but they get beaten. And Thor knows that Loki is controlling this Destroyer, and so he turns around. He says, guys, we can't defeat him. We just got to get out of here. He tells them all to run, and instead of running himself, he turns around to the Destroyer and he talks to him. And you can see that Loki can hear him. And he says, Loki, I don't know what I did to upset you. At this point, he knows that he's lied about everything. He's like, Loki, I'm sorry. Don't hurt these people. Take me. If you're upset with me, take me. And there's this really great moment where the robot kind of turns away and then smacks him in the face. He flies through the air and he dies. Thor dies. And you're like, whoa. And at that moment, you see that is worthiness. Because at that moment, the hammer starts shaking, And then we learn the big lesson. The final lesson in this movie, and the big thing that Thor needed to learn, is worthiness is sacrificing yourself, your life even, your own aspirations, to protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what he messed up on in the past when he was going to attack the frost giants. He wasn't thinking about protecting people. He was just thinking about, getting revenge. This time he was thinking about everybody, and he was willing to sacrifice, his dignity, his life, just everything that he had at that point. And then we see that, okay, that's worthiness. And the hammer comes to him. He comes back to life, grabs the hammer in this really cool scene where lightning comes down, and his clothes come back on that he had before, like his armor and everything, which is kind of cool. So I guess, lightning and magic and stuff is still there. And maybe that's still science. Science. It can make your clothes come out of lightning. Because he says earlier, what you call science, we call magic. So what's the science of clothes coming out of lightning? I don't know. He's Thor again, which is great. And he's learned his lesson. He takes down the destroyer. They're able to go back to Asgard. He sees that Loki is still trying to use trickery to take over. He's told the frost giants to come and attack Odin while he's sleeping. But that's actually another deception, because he then kills the frost giants and says, I'm the big hero here. But Thor knows he's been lying about everything. So when he finds him, he tries to stop him. There's this big fight. Thor wins, and Loki, unfortunately, falls away to oblivion. We don't know where he ends up. Odin comes up and says, Thor, you're going to make a good king. You've turned around. You've understood now, and you'll be king. And Thor at that point is like, not yet. I'm not ready. I've still got a lot to learn. And so that whole turnaround thing again. We've seen that in some of these other origin movies. He had this one goal he wanted to be king, to be Thor, to be awesome. And he found out that maybe he's not that awesome. He needs to learn, and he needs to protect the people who can't protect themselves. And that's a pretty cool lesson. That's Thor. That's what we learned. By the end of this movie, I was more excited about Thor than I had ever been before. So then I asked myself the big question. Should my kids also watch Thor? So again, this movie's rated PG-13. So ratings to me is something that's interesting. I mean, that's a group of people just trying to decide what they think is best. I think it's a good gauge. It's a good guideline, but it doesn't mean everything. I don't think PG-13, PG, even rated R are necessarily the perfect gauges of what a movie's content is. It's a bunch of people's opinions about content and about story. So after learning these lessons, these lessons are definitely something I would want my kids to learn. So yes, in that regard, I'd want my kids to watch this movie. Is it one, does the content though work for the ages of my kids, the personalities of my kids? I mean, looking back at Thor, the content I feel like was pretty tame. It was, I think, less violent than Hulk and Iron Man. There's really not much blood. There's a little bit on Thor when he dies, but then he comes right back to life. And I think that's okay, because it kind of, helps elevate that drama so you understand the sacrifice he went through. I don't think there's anything too gratuitous about that. I don't remember even any language. There was really no cursing, a little bit of violence, nothing remotely sexual. There's some kissing, but that's it. And those are kind of the things I look for as far as content. So would I share this movie with my kids? Yes, I would. I think it would be a lot of fun with my 12-year-old. My 10-year-old would have a lot of fun. I even think my 7 and my 5-year-old would actually have fun watching this too with me, just making sure that they understand what's going on. And I'd be okay sharing this movie with my kids. I think that would work. So there we go. That's Thor. What do you think about this? Comment below. Let me know if you would share this movie with your kids, if you thought you'd learn the same things, if you've already seen this movie. Hit like if you liked learning about the lessons in this movie. Hit subscribe if you want to learn about lessons in other movies. And I'll talk to you next time.